Hello, welcome. My name is Elizabeth. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm really glad you're here because I have something a little different for you today. Now, I know that I am so late to this discussion, like by 5 years or something, but I've only had a YouTube channel for 2 years and I took a whole year off. So I am here today to discuss with you certain books that are on the disturbing book Iceberg. Now, there's no way I can go through all of them. And if I did go through all of them, I'd be able to give you like a sentence on each, and that's not my style. So I am going to do this a little different than most uploaders that I've seen. I'm going to go through I'm only going through the first 4 tiers. So I'm going to go through 4 books on each of those tiers that I recommend and why. And then I'm going to, for the 5th book of each tier, I'm going to add one that I think should also be included on that tier. So hopefully this will give you some recommendations, some ideas, some books to put on your TBR. And if any of these sound really, really interesting and you'd like to hear the full story, let me know in the comments below and maybe I will cover the whole book. Caveat. We all know that these lists are really, they're about personal opinion, right? There is so much that plays into these opinions. And with books, that list of influence is very long. How old were you when you read it? Was it the most disturbing book you'd read up to that point? Or was it just another in the long list of disturbing books that you'd read? What was going on in your life while you read it, assuming you didn't read it in one sitting? Did you read it or did you listen to it? Did you read it alone or part of a book club? And then there's, of course, the biggest influence of all. Have you even read it? Right? I mean, a lot of the times you get to these lists, you're like, oh, I haven't read that book. Oh, I haven't read that book. Oh, I should check that book out, right? So you might not have even read it, right? Anyway, I could go on, but I think I've made my point. So with that caveat in mind, I hope you enjoy my take on the Iceberg as well as my additions. Join me for the ride. Okay, so 4 books on tier 1. The first one is, it always sort of surprises me when it shows up in these disturbing book icebergs because I don't find it that disturbing. I mean, I know it's on the first level, but this is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. Now, Shirley Jackson is a very, very famous, disturbing, older book writer. She wrote The Lottery, which is one of the first disturbing short stories that like a lot of us read as in school. So this is We've Always Lived in the Castle. It was turned into a movie, and they did a pretty good job with it. They really did. I was very pleased with it. So I would put this book as unsettling more than anything else. It's a story of a wealthy family. And it's, oh God, it's like I think it's more like, it's like the 50s, 40s, 50s. And so they live, there's a small town, and they live on the edge of the town in a very large house that's gated. Now, most of the family has died in a dinner tragedy when the sugar on the table for dinner one night was laced with arsenic. Only 3 members of the family survived. Uncle Julian, who is now disabled and is mentally off. And then the 2 sisters, Constance and Mary Cat. Now, Mary Cat had been sent to bed without dinner, and Constance doesn't put sugar on her blueberries. So, due to this, the entire town thinks that Constance is the one who poisoned the family. But she is found not guilty, and at the end of the trial, which happens before the book even starts. So now she's housebound, though she does take wonderful care of the house. And every week she sends Mary Cat off to town to get supplies, to get whatever foodstuffs they need, maybe, exchange a couple of records or books at the library and come home. And Constance will get like 10 steps from the front door outside and be like, look how far I made it. I'm so proud of myself. So like she's pretty agoraphobic. Mary Cat hates going into town. I mean, the townspeople aren't nice to her. They have a little rhyme that they say about Constance poisoning her family, and they're just, the Blackwell family has all this money and they live in this huge house, and then everybody else is in the town, not nearly as much money. So there's just this tension. And that's just like where we are when it starts. Mary Cat will perform this like natural magic that she's created. She'll take her father's journal and nail it to a tree, or she'll grab some ancient coins and she'll put them in a bottle with dirt and bury it in the ground, or like she does all these things to try to like keep herself and Constance and Uncle Julian safe. But everything goes awry when a distant cousin shows up and starts to court Constance. Now, a lot of the unsettling stuff is sort of how the neighborhood reacts to what happens with this family. And Mary Cat and Constance have such like a vice grip on their life that any little change, it throws Mary Cat way out of whack. And, Constance is just excited to have somebody else to take care of, and things just spiral from there. Really creepy, really cool. I've always loved it. I read it when I was really young for the first time, and so I think that's probably why I keep thinking like it's not that disturbing. There is you do find out eventually what happened to the family, and it's, by the time you get to the reveal, it's not so shocking. It's not a long read. It's a pretty short book, and I highly suggest it. Now, second one on this book, I have a copy of this. Oh, well, I'll use the digital. Is FantasticLand by Mike Bockoven. Oh, no. I lent this out. I gotta get it back. Now, I am working on writing a script for this one to do a full deep dive, but since it is one of my all-time favorite books, it's really hard for me to write a script because I want every detail to be included. And of course I can't do that. If you want every detail, you're gonna have to read it yourself, right? So the story is of over 300 mostly 18 to 22-year-olds who are left in an amusement park to keep everything protected after all the guests have evacuated due to a hurricane. The employees get left there originally they're told 48, 72 hours at the most. They're left there for over 5 weeks. Now, they have enough food, they have enough water, they have shelter, they have all those things they need to survive, but the park eventually ends up a battleground with literal lethal consequences. And when I say a battleground, I mean like a battleground, a war, a lethal war. Now, the story is told in the most incredibly creative way. It is told through first-person accounts. Each chapter has a different person's account of what happened. And it moves forward in the story beautifully, right? He starts with like the person who knows the most about the park, and you get this history of the park. And then you hear from somebody who knows all about disaster preparedness and, dealing with disasters and what happened during this disaster, to the head of the employees and what the plan is for the employees to stay, and then one of the families who gets evacuated, and then one of the maintenance guys who gets left there, and then and it just works its way through, and you end up seeing the whole story, the whole sordid, horrifying story, and it makes sense. Like, when you hear this, kids are left in an amusement park and it ends up at a battleground, that makes no sense. How do you get from A to B? But the way Bockoven tells the story, it makes perfect sense that this would happen. And I've often described it to people as Lord of the Flies, modern Lord of the Flies at an amusement park with older kids. Because, Lord of the Flies is kids who are all boys and they're all just barely prepubescent. And these are 18 to 22-year-olds in a modern world that gets cut off from all their devices. None of their devices work. For the most part, they don't even have them with them because they're at the park. And that alone just causes so many issues with these young people. It's so good. There's one chapter that I have been known to just listen to or read as a short story. So good. Jason Card's story, in case you're curious which one. Just highly recommend. So good. So shocking and awesome. And really, with the exception of one character, they're just kids. They're just young adults. You know, there's like one sociopath, but like really it's a park full of decent human beings that are just sort of young. So, okay. Number 3, Battle Royale by, I hope I pronounced this right, Koushun Takami. Now, turns out The Hunger Games was not the first novel to have teenagers killing each other. This story came out in 1999, and it's about a young high school class in Japan. Now, they're riding a bus to their class trip, which they're all very excited about, and they've packed a, overnight bag for, and all the windows on the bus go dark. The teachers don gas masks. The kids are dosed with gas and are knocked out. When they wake up, they find that each of them is now wearing a metal collar around their neck that they can't get off. They're told that they will each be given a pack, and then they need to head out. They need to stay within the sections of the map as it's marked, because everyone gets a map, and one person is going to survive, and everybody else has to kill each other. The only way that you're going to survive is if you take out your classmates. Okay, so each student is given equal amounts of water and food and survival gear, but each student gets a different weapon. And when I say a different weapon, I mean one gets a shotgun and another gets a butter knife. Like, the weapons are vastly different, but everybody gets something. And then we watch as each of the students reacts to the situation. Some revel in the situation and lean into their psychosis. Some try to hide, but you really can't do that. One couple goes off and just tries to spend as much time as they can together, but only one will survive, and who will it be? And is there a way to work together to get against the game makers? That's always a goal at some point in these stories, but is that even possible? So it was difficult as an American. It was difficult to catch on to the names because the names are so different than what I'm used to like who is who, but it's a pretty long story, so you really, by the time I got to the end, I knew exactly who everybody was just by their names. But at first I was like, wait, which one is that? So, but I loved it. I thought it was really great. Now, my addition to this tier is Room by Emma Donoghue. I've mentioned this in other uploads. This is the story of a young woman who is kidnapped and kept captive by a man who wants to control her and use her for himself. We meet her 7 years into her captivity, and she has a 5-year-old son. So at first, it's just the story of Jack and Ma and Room. But when he turns 5, she convinces him to do some things that might eventually get them both saved. Dangerous, scary things he doesn't want to do. He wants to stay in Room. Room is his whole world, but she convinces him. And then it's the story of the aftermath. It's harrowing and heartbreaking. And the story is, some of it's seen through, most of it's seen through the eyes of Jack, right? Like you get Jack's point of view. And some of it is really, really dark. So like at night when they're still in captivity, he sleeps in the dresser in like the armoire. He's little. And every night the man comes in and she never wants him to see the man. So she puts him in the wardrobe and then he counts the squeaks on the bed every night. Oh, tonight there were 56. Yesterday there was 92. 3 nights ago there was 37. He's 5. And he's been doing this for years. Horrifying. But really good. They turned this into a movie. I think Brie Larson won an Academy Award for it, playing Ma. And Jacob Tremblay played Jack, and he was just brilliant. And I originally listened to this, and the voice actor that they use for Jack is great because he sounds like a little child. And I think that's where a lot of the horrific lies, because you're hearing the story through a 5-year-old, and it's so awful. And he doesn't even realize how awful it is, which I think is part of why that is. Anyway, okay, tier 2. First book I have on this list is Cows by Matt Stokes. Now, I would put Cows lower down on the Iceberg, but that's probably because, well, let me tell you about it. This is one of those books that feels like it's trying to be gross for the sake of being gross. Like, the author may have said, you know what, let me figure out the grossest thing I can think of and the most depraved thing I can think of and put it in a story. Like, that's how this feels. So it's about a man in his 20s who lives with his verbally and otherwise abusive mother. She is grossly obese. He refers to her as the hag beast. At the beginning of the story, he gets a job at the local slaughterhouse, killing cows. He also begins a sexual relationship with the weird lady who lives, a floor above, or a couple of floors above he and his mom. It's a gory, despicable nightmare full of disgusting splatterpunk scenes, depraved violence against animals, to the consumption of things that shouldn't be consumed, and I'm not gonna go there. Sorry, did I make a face? So just know that when you think you've read the most depraved scene, you probably haven't. Oh, and there's a bunch of talking cows. I liked the talking cows. I think the talking cows are maybe my favorite part of this story. This is definitely one I had to push myself through, because some of the things are just so very depraved. Okay, now this one I actually have a physical copy of. I mean, a bunch of them I have physical copies of, but they're lent out. This is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. Danielewski? I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. I'm sure I probably am. This book is not like any other book. Period. Even just flipping through it, it's weird, right? I mean, like, this is 2 pages with some Roman numerals on it, and that's it. Like, this is just, it's wacky. So, it's also a book that needs to be read with more than one bookmark, which is why a bookmark lives in there. So, I'm going to tell you about this book. I'm going to start with some basic plot points. Our main character is Johnny. He is a tattoo apprentice, and he discovers a manuscript left behind by Zampato. Now, Zampato recently died. The manuscript concerns a documentary called The Navidson Report. Now, that concerns a family and the house they live in, and the house is larger on the inside than it is on the outside. Now, at first, it's like minimal. They measure the inside, and then they measure the outside, and the dad's like, wait, that doesn't make sense. How can it be 3 inches bigger on the inside? Like, that, like, that doesn't make any sense. The math's not mathing. And then it's gradual, but, first it's the hallway is 3 times as long as it's supposed to be. Or now the hallway has a weird door. And now if you go into that door, you end up on a seemingly endless, never-ending staircase. Or it takes you to a maze. And whatever they do to try to keep track of the way things are in the house keeps shifting and changing, and it's really unsettling. Like they, like they'll bring themselves, like a whole kit to keep them alive for as long as they get stuck inside this hallway. And it's like labyrinthian. He'll be gone for days and days, and they're like, is he ever even coming back? And they tie a rope so they don't get lost, and then of course they lose the rope. And I mean, it's wacky. So, and it's a story within a story within a story. So the Navidson Report is basically a found footage documentary film. And the manuscript is about the Navidson Report. And then Johnny finds the manuscript, but he adds to it. So we get all of Johnny's life added to the manuscript, like what he was doing when he discovered this and he read this and what was going on. And because of all of that, story within a story within a story on top of a story, there are countless footnotes, addendums, indices, opinions, added personal accounts, sometimes ones that seem so disjointed, the connection of its inclusion is completely lost on me. I'm sure if I read it again, now I'm in the middle of reading it a second time, but hopefully I'll get more out of it this time when I read it, because like I needed to bookmarks, because there's like a whole little story in the back that's just a footnote to something in the front. So like I needed to know where I was in that page, the actual book, and then I need to know where I was in the footnotes. And I mean, like, and it's there's a line there and there's some written there. It's just, and I see it as the story, it's sort of like the story and the house mirror each other. So as the story and the book and as the house gets more complicated, the book gets more complicated. And as the story, the book, the house gets more maze-like, so does the book. So as they're trying to find their way around the house, you're trying to find your way around the book, which is really neat. It's not like anything you've ever experienced. And it was not easy to get through. This was not an easy read by any stretch. It took me a long time, and I read a lot of books while I was reading it. But I do feel accomplished that I finished it. That definitely made me feel great. And I could discuss this book for days on it. Long Walk. This is my copy of the Bockoven books. And this is my original, like, this is what I read The Long Walk out of the first time that I read it. And the Bockoven books were 4 books that Stephen King wrote and then published them under the name Richard Bachman. To see if it was just his name or if he's really a, incredible writer. This has Rage, The Long Walk, Roadwork, and The Running Man in it. Rage is very, very controversial, if you want to look into that one. But The Long Walk was like probably one of my first favorite disturbing books. I read it over one weekend when I was a teen. I think I was 15. So for this particular story, there's the added horror to the fact that I am the same age at the time of reading it as the main characters, which really connected and affected me. So, and the picture on the front with the skulls, that's from The Long Walk, for sure. That's not the other ones. So this is the story, and they've just recently made it into a movie. I have not seen it. This is the story of a future United States where every year there is a contest between states. Every state sends a boy between the ages of 14 and 17 to compete in this long walk. and it starts at the tip of Maine, and it goes to the tip of Florida, and the boys have to maintain walking at a certain speed the whole way. So in the book, originally, King made it 4 miles an hour. And then years later, I think he probably was on a treadmill or something and put it to 4 miles an hour and was like, oh, this is way too fast. Because 4 miles an hour is really like a jog. So I think they changed it for the movie. So don't get stuck on the miles per hour. Maybe it ended up being 2.5 miles per hour, but whatever it was, that threshold was, it was a pace that was walking, right? The long walk. And if any of the boys, they're all monitored, and if any of them fall below the minimum speed, they get a warning. And after 3 warnings, the soldiers that are, riding in Humvees and Jeeps and whatnot alongside them will come over and shoot them in the head. Stephen King. So, you start this book, you meet 50 boys between the ages of 14 and 17, and all but one of them is going to die. So there's their backstories and how they got there. There's what happens when they're actually on the walk, who they, how they compete or how they connect or how they become friends with or how they end up and how it affects each other. It's just, Stephen King at his absolute best. And like I said, it took me a weekend, not even, to read. Of course, I was 15, so I didn't have any of the responsibilities probably at the time except for reading, but it has stayed with me. And anytime anyone says to me, I want to get into Stephen King, where should I start? I say, start with The Long Walk. Because it's not like, if you tell someone to read Desperation, they're going to be like, what the hell is this? So, this is an easier place to jump on the Stephen King bandwagon. That or Carey. The problem is that everyone's heard of Carey and knows the story. But if you don't, Carey is a great place to start. It's actually the first book of his that I read. But I digress. Okay, so the next book on this tier is Unwind by Neal Schusterman. This is the story of a future where abortion is illegal. However, if you choose to, you can have your 13 to 16-year-old unwound. And what does that mean exactly? Well, in this future, they have figured out how to transplant and reuse every single part of the body. The sinew, the veins, the blood, the fascia, everything gets reused. So if you donate your child to be unwound and therefore their parts are given to other children so that they can survive, that child's not really gone. They're not really dead because all their parts are still working. And it is a great way to keep the kids in line. I'll have you unwound. How terrifying. And to turn, I think it's 18 is when they can't unwind you anymore. And so the night that you turn, the day you turn 18, you're like, oh God, thank God I'm safe. But until then, there's just this, they could take them in the middle of the night and unwind them. It's extra messed up because I think this is considered YA literature. Now, if you have a baby and you successfully leave it on somebody's doorstep, and what do I mean by successfully? That means nobody sees you. There's no trace of you. Nobody can connect you to that baby. What happens? The family whose doorstep you left it on has to raise that baby. It's the law. So you could have actual children in your family, and then you could have a baby that was left on the porch, the front porch. So that's an interesting dynamic within families, right? And at one point, we meet a character who's a tithe. He's the 11th, 12th, I don't know, something in the family. And so he's literally born to be a tithe. He knows that at 13, he's going to be unwound. And that is how he's lived his entire life, knowing that this is his destiny. And we meet really incredible characters, and really incredible things happen. And there's a whole series, and it gets so upsetting. And the later books are even more upsetting. And you're like, how could this get more upsetting? And it does. But the whole Unwind series is great. Just the idea that you could choose to basically kill your child, but it's not considered killing because all their parts are still being used. People come up with these things. Okay, my addition to tier 2 is Bad Games by Jeff Menapace. So this is, and I think I didn't realize how disturbing this was until I suggested a friend check it out who also likes disturbing things. And she was like, this is beyond. How can you read this? This is awful. Like, not awful written, but like so disturbing and dark. And I was like, oh, that's the line. Okay. So this is the story of a family of sociopaths, but when we meet them, they're just two brothers, and they enjoy making other people's lives miserable. Literally, they like messing with people. They like destroying their lives. When I say destroying their lives, I mean like mess with them until they kill them and destroy them. Like destroy their lives first and then ultimately kill them. And the two brothers set their sights on this family of 4 that's headed to a vacation. Mom, dad, daughter, son. The kids are young, and they see them at a gas station. The brothers pay for the family's gas, even though the father's like, I got it. It's not a problem. You don't need to pay for our gas. We got it, And they have a car seat in the back of their car, the brothers, and so they say something about how, oh, you look at your cute kids, I've got a couple at home, whatever. So they're like disarmed by them, and then they end up following them, and they torment them literally for the rest of their lives. Maybe not the kids' rest of their lives, but certainly the parents. And this is another one that's a series, so you get through the first book and then you read the next one, you're like, oh my God, they're still messing with them. And you get to the third one, you're like, holy shit, they're still messing with them. And then the son, whose name is Caleb, grows up, and what he does with his life is absolutely because of what he went through when he was 3, 4, 5. So all of it is just fascinating and disturbing and really upsetting. I want to warn you on that one because, like I said, I had suggested to a friend who was like, this is way too far for me. Okay, so we have made it to tier 3. So the first one on this list that I really like is The Ruins by Scott Smith. Now, The Ruins is the story of 4 college kids who go down to Mexico for spring break. While they're there, they meet a guy who says he's going to an ancient Mayan ruin that's not at all touristy. And in fact, if you're not from around there and you don't have like the right map and the right guide, you'll never find it. So it's like totally not touristy. And of course, they want to check it out. He says he's meeting a couple of his friends there. They had gone off without him, and he'd love to have someone to travel with him to the ruins. So the 5 of them decide they're going to go. They head off. Only when they get there, the indigenous people who live around there, right, they come out from the jungle and they start yelling at them. But it's in a dialect that they don't understand. Like, the Spanish is just different enough that they can't communicate with them. And the college kids, like, they're yelling at them to stay away from. They don't know that's what they're saying, but stay away from the ruins. And they're getting so upset about being yelled at that they like sort of back into the ruins. And as soon as they touch any of the vines, everything changes with the natives. All of a sudden, they go from stay away from the ruins to get up onto the ruins, you're never coming down. Now, how do they communicate this? So one of the college kids sort of trips on some of the vines, so she picks them up and she throws it, and it hits a child, one of the indigenous children. And then there's yelling, and there's yelling, and there's yelling, and then they shoot the child. I don't remember if they use an arrow or a bullet, but they shoot the child. And our college kids are like, what are you... So they run up to the top of the ruin because they think that's where they'll be safe. When we get there, they find all of the camping gear of the person who brought them there. They're his friends, but they can't find his friends. So they're looking around. They see that there's like a hole in the top of the ruins because there's like you can get inside, right? And they hear something down there. So the one who brought them decides he's like, I need to go down there and see if I can find my friends. And he ends up, of course, hurting himself. So first, it's just how do we get him out, right? Especially if he's like maybe broken his legs or his back or God only knows. So they get him out. The vines, it turns out, are carnivorous. They can make any sound from their flowers. Any sound. They can sound like a cell phone. They can sound like a person. And they get inside you. If, like I said, you have any cut, it's really terrifying. There's a movie version and it's really good. And I think the reason it's really good is because the author is also the screenwriter. And it was neat because I read it and then I watched the movie and I was like, this is hilarious. So reminds me of something I would do if I was writing something. There's 4 main college kids, right? They're couples, 2 boys, 2 girls. And the 2 girls, one of them gets really just horrifically injured and hurt, and like everything she goes through is just awful. And in the movie, it's the other character. And I love that because he was like, I can't do this to this character anymore. I'm going to have to do this to the other one because it's just, I thought that was so great. Very human to do that. The ending is really interesting, and so it's a little unsettling and whatnot. Second book on this list is a memoir. It's called A Child Called It by Dave Pelzer. Now, like I said, it's a memoir, so it's a true story, and that is why it's so horrifying. There is a kind of abusive parent that will pick out one child and put all the abuse and all the pain and all the hate and all the awfulness onto one child. The rest of the children will be loved and fed and treated kindly, but that one is just horribly singled out. Child Called It, Dave, first of all, his mother calls him It. She makes him sleep in the garage. He has to do all of the cleaning for the house. If he's lucky, he gets scraps left over from the dog's bowl. I mean, it's just, I don't know how anyone can treat anyone this way, especially a mother to their child, right? He doesn't go to school because there's no reason for him to go to school. And the stories of abuse just get worse and worse and worse. And he does eventually get away from her. He's written, I think, at least 3 memoirs. This is about his early childhood. There's another one about his teen years, and then there's one about him being an adult. And it, like I said, it's a true story about a kid who is surrounded by siblings that are loved and cared for, and he is not. So, in those abusive situations, usually siblings have each other to hang on to. And in this case, the siblings were like, I don't want to be anywhere near him because I don't want to get treated that way. They can't blame them. They're children. They just want to, be safe. And again, it's a true story. So it's just beyond horrifying. Okay, next on this list is The Abuse of Ashley Collins by John Athan. I have a full plot description on this one on my channel, so check it out if this seems interesting to you. Ashley is an out-of-control teenager whose parents have reached their breaking point, and they've devised a plan. They're going to tie her up and keep her captive in the basement for punishment and rehab, if possible. The things that the parents do to this girl and the things that she does to them when she gets the upper hand are gruesome, I think is the right word. Things are so horrifying. But watching the mom go from not really wanting to even, watch what was happening to fully participating sadistically. Crazy. And when the story started, I was like, this teenager is the worst. I can't wait to see what they're going to do to discipline her. But by the time it was over, I was like, oh, you go, Ashley. Yeah, you do what you need to do. All right, Ashley. And that was one of the things that shocked me the most, was how much my opinion changed while reading this book. Because when it first started, I was like, this girl's the worst. And then by the end, I was like, you go, girl. So, um, and it was a pretty quick read. If it had been any, and just the way that they abuse each other is just, there aren't words. Okay, number 4, The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. Now, this is inspired by a true story. It is not the true story, but it's definitely inspired by it. Now, the true story is that there were 2 sisters who were left with a woman who had many children of her own. I think a couple of them were boarders, and their parents were carnival folks, and they wanted the girls to like get a decent education and be in the same place for a little while, so they would send money every week for this woman to house the kids. And in the book, it is 2 sisters who are sent to their aunt. So the woman they are sent to is not a complete stranger in this story. It's their aunt. And eventually, the woman will start to abuse the girls. At first, it's, your parents didn't send me the money. You didn't do this right, or you didn't do that right, and you need to be punished. And she hit them. But, but this is, I think it takes place in like the 60s, maybe the 70s, but I think it's more like the 60s. And at first, it's just regular parental discipline. So the oldest sister is going to get much more of the abuse because the younger one has survived polio, has a leg brace and a limp, and she uses a cane or braces or something. So she's already injured, and I think the aunt is like, I probably shouldn't mess with her more. So she really messes mostly with the older one. And the aunt starts to get her children involved. Like, Bobby, what do you think about that? Don't you want to slap her? Don't you want to do this to her? Don't you want to, what do you think we should do to her? What do you think we should do to them? And then she starts inviting like the neighborhood kids over, and the neighborhood kids all hang out in her house. And she lets them drink beer and smoke cigarettes. And, especially if they're going to burn this girl with their cigarettes for sure. They carve something into her belly, a message. It's just, and I think Jack Ketchum's take on this is so upsetting because it is seen through the eyes of a neighborhood boy who's totally sympathetic towards the victim, but not strong enough to do anything to keep her safe. So he's not able, he just keeps, he's a bystander. He just keeps watching, and he doesn't want to be a bystander, but he is. And it's just, he's literally telling you the story of watching these things happen, and yet he's not doing anything. And, there's older kids, and there's this adult woman, and it's just, children participating in this kind of thing is just, and like I said, it's a true story. So the real woman, I think her name is Gertrude, and her eldest son both went to prison for a long time. And I think some of the other kids were also, I don't know if they went to like juvenile homes or what, but people were very punished for this. Okay. It's rough. And Jack Ketchum is a visceral writer. Like you can feel and see what's happening. Okay, so my addition to tier 3 is The Black Farm by Elias Witherow. And I have a full deep dive on this one as well as the sequel, which is Return to the Black Farm. This is the story of Nick and Jess, who find themselves in despair in their life. They're out of work. They're losing their home. Her sister was just diagnosed with terminal cancer. And then they have a miscarriage. And they decide that unaliving themselves and the dream of wonderfulness of nothing is the only future they have. But it turns out, in this world, when humans do that, they don't go to heaven, they don't go to hell, and there isn't just blackness. They go to the Black Farm, a place where all kinds of terrible torment can and will befall you. Things that are beyond horrifying. I know I keep saying beyond horrifying, don't I? That's because this is a list of disturbing things. But if you manage to be completely destroyed, in other words, like die on the Black Farm, you will be spit out again by the clouds, which is how you come through to the Black Farm the first time. So even if you are completely destroyed, you will just be spit out by the clouds again to continue living on the Black Farm. There are a lot of people who have, done this many, many times. Nick and Jess first have to find each other, then stay together, then figure out if there's a way off the farm, if there is one. And the things like when Nick gets there and he asks somebody like, I need to find my girlfriend. Where do you think she is? And someone says, well, you better hope she's not with, and they say one of the characters' names, and he says, oh no, I better go check and make sure that she's not with that person, or that creature, monster, whatever. And he goes and he finds that monster, and Jess isn't there, but he gets captured by the monster. And the things that monster puts him through is still to this day lives rent-free in my brain and is just, anyway, that one is, but if you want all the details, I'll link it below. Strap in, man, that one's rough. Okay, we have made it to tier 4, where it's even more disturbing. So, okay, this next one is by Matt Shaw. And if you don't know who Matt Shaw is, he is a extremely prolific writer who writes very, very disturbing works. Some of his stuff you can't get through, like, Amazon, for instance. They won't sell it. You have to go to his website and order a PDF, which feels sort of subversive, right? This one, Happy Ever After, you can get. I have it in Kindle, I believe, and from Amazon. So this is the story of a man named Peter who does not understand what love is or how humans interact with each other properly, respectfully, symbiotically. Peter wants love. He wants to fall in love more than anything else in the world, but he has no idea how to go about that in any sort of healthy way. In fact, he goes about it in one of the worst ways possible. He takes women. He takes them and imprisons them in his home and tries to convince them to love him. This particular story is Peter taking Vanessa. She is not the first woman he's done this to by any stretch, but he has hope that this one might actually work out. And why is that? Because at their very first dinner together, when they wake up tied to the chair and they have their very, very first discussion with him, Vanessa answered one of his questions differently than the rest of the women. When he asks her if she could ever see herself, if we were the only two people left on this planet, could you see yourself loving me? Could that ever, ever be? And she doesn't say no. She's thinking about self-preservation, and she thinks if I say no, God only knows what he's going to say to me. So she says yes. She's the only woman who's ever said yes. So he's got real hope. But that doesn't make the process any easier. She still wants to know why she's tied up, why she can't go home. She begs to see her family. She tells him she needs to get to work, but he doesn't care. He only sees the potential love interest that Vanessa may be. And she is just trying to manipulate the situation so she doesn't die. And she does a really good job of it too. It's another one where I'm like, you go, girl. But the ending will shock and disturb you if you're anything like me. I could not believe it. It was just like, no. Now, there's a sequel to this book called A Fresh Start. I've also covered that. So If you wanted to check that out, you could as well. They are part of a bigger collection of the works, and the whole work is called His Name Was Peter, and it's sort of Peter's whole life. And he's got a very disturbing life. Okay. Next, let's go play at the Atoms by Mendal Washington. I'm working on a script for this one. This is the story of Barbara. Barbara is a 20-year-old college student in the summer before her junior year, and she's secured a job babysitting a wealthy family's 2 children. She comes to stay with the family for, I think it's about 4 days before the parents leave on their week-long vacation. The morning that the parents leave, Barbara wakes up tied to her bed. There's a gag in her mouth. She's really confused. She is, okay, so maybe the kids did this. Okay, well, they're going to untie me any second because they're going to realize they need me. They need a grown-up around. Who's going to make them breakfast? Who's going to, take care of everything for them? And then she hears a conversation between one of her charges and a neighborhood boy. They're using code names and discussing Barbara and how they've got her, which is when she starts to realize that this is far worse than she originally assumed. So 5 kids end up being her tormentors, 2 from the Addams family, where she's employed, and 3 from neighborhood kids. They range from 8 to 17 years old, and mostly they just want to taste freedom from adult supervision. But when every decision they make is by committee vote, things go way too far. And the kids have to figure out how they're going to end their little experiment. Will any of the grown-ups figure out what the children have done or are doing? And will Barbara even make it out alive? This one is so upsetting because it's like The Girl Next Door, because the abuse is perpetrated by children. And in this case, there's no adult leading the charge. The moral compass within children isn't the same as adults. And that is where the realism of this story lies, and the horror. Let's go play at the Atoms. And it's pretty old, too. It's from, I don't know if it came out in the 70s or 80s, but it's been around for a long time. Okay, we're at another Jack Ketchum book. It's called Off Season. Now, this is the story of 3 couples who go on vacation to a remote area where they have rented a cabin. Problem is that there is a clan of cannibals living nearby. And when they spot the vacationers, they set their sights on them as their next big meal. Oh my God. So the clan is very primitive. They live in a cave. They wear cast-offs from their victims. They do not wear shoes. The alpha males take what they want when they want it, whether it's food, sex, or to abuse a child. They are the head of the clan, and they are not questioned. Still, the women have strength as well. Their laughter towards the alpha males, is often all that they need to get under their skin. The children run around completely feral. And a battle will ensue, right? So they attack the vacationers, and the vacationers try to defend themselves and survive. And this bloody, disgusting battle that is so grotesque ensues, and very few of them make it out alive. Very, very few make it out alive. And it's the descriptions of the way that the clan is living and the way that they interact with each other, and like the way that the children see the vacationers. It's a lot. Now, the 4th book on this tier is called The Girl with All the Gifts by Mike Carey. Now, if I was telling someone about this book and I knew they were going to read it and I didn't want to give them too much, I would not tell them what I'm about to tell you. And that is that this book is about a zombie apocalypse. The story begins at a military outpost where a teacher has a class of children who are really unlike any other class you've ever encountered. The kids are all strapped into wheelchairs with their arms bound, and their heads are connected to the chairs with a metal headband that goes around their foreheads. Teacher still teaches by, asking questions of the students and getting answers, But there's one little girl, Melanie, and she's remarkable. She is pretty much a genius. She knows at this point what they're studying is the periodic table. She knows every element by its number, its code, its everything. She knows all of it. And she remembers, like exactly what everybody says to them and calls them. She keeps track of things that the rest of the students like don't even notice. And the outbreak, when the zombie outbreak causes a breach in her outpost, the teacher, a scientist, a soldier, and Melanie will try to survive in a military van outfitted with medical supplies. Can the humans survive? Are they supposed to survive? What happens next? The scientist isn't actually all that morally sound. And why are these little zombie children so different from the other zombies that are just like your typical zombies? They can't be calm. You can't have a conversation with them. But these kids, you can literally, as long as you do enough precautions, you can somehow be safe around them because they can have a conversation with you. So there's a lot of like, what is this? And then when you get to what it actually is, it is jaw-dropping. They made a movie about this one, and it's good. It's, they had to make some changes, but the doctor is played by Glenn Close. She's a pretty famous actress. When you first start reading, it takes a little while before you realize that you're reading a zombie apocalypse book, which I also found really, really neat. And I loved this book. I've recommended it to a ton of people, and certainly read it more than once. So I would probably have put it higher up on the disturbing Iceberg, like on a higher tier. I don't find it quite as disturbing as it being on the 4th tier, but I also, go back to my caveat, and I find zombies to be sort of silly and funny. So, and I really enjoy zombie stories and movies and whatnot. So I think I'm a little desensitized to the whole zombie thing, which again, it's just, for whatever reason that, zombies don't scare me quite as much. But it is, by the time we get to the end, it's a pretty bleak ending for us. But I love the disturbing. So, I love this one. I highly recommend it to anyone and everyone. The Girl with All the Gifts, Mike Carey, so good. Okay, my addition to Tier 4 is by Aron Beauregard, and it's called Playground. This one is really rough. This is another one I've been trying to work on a script for a while, but it's... Oh, and I have this book. Oh, shoot. It's downstairs in my bag with a bunch of notes and things all over it because I'm trying to figure out how to tell you guys all about it. Okay. Playground. This is about a sadistic woman who is angry at every family that has children because she could never have them, and she is hateful above everything else. She has a kind of slave in this man called Brock, who she completely controls. She sends him out to find families, ones with more than one child, preferably, and he offers them a chance to try out a new playground. He says that they're doing market research and they will pay the family $2,000 to participate. $1,000 now, and another after the test of the playground is complete. Most families jump at the chance. $2,000 is a decent amount of money and can be helpful with a lot of things. In this story, 3 families arrive with their children. Only one of them is a single mother with a single child. Brock does get in trouble for that, but it's all he could find. The 6 children are ushered into the playground, and their parents are situated in a room with a lot of monitors so that they can watch. Now, at first, it's a normal playground, but soon they're ushered out of the normal playground into a new room. There are instructions on the wall that they must follow, and as they move from room to room, the playground becomes more and more deadly. The woman who created this place, along with an ex-Nazi doctor, loves every minute of the misery and pain she's causing. How the kids react, how they try or don't try to make it through, with what some of the kids are willing to do to each other to make it out. So horrifying. And don't think that the parents are safe just because they happen to be in the room with the monitors, because they're not. Like, nobody's safe. This is, in some ways, it kind of reminds me of like Saw for kids, but without the moral center of like trying to teach the kids who are, like, because in Saw, all of those tests were to make you appreciate life. She's literally just wants to watch kids suffer and die. And there's another scene from that one that sort of lives rent-free in my brain that just, Okay, so I know I said I was only doing 4 tiers of the disturbing book Iceberg, but I do have an edition for below the 4th tier, and I don't know if I put it on 5 or 6 or something, but this is a collection of stories by Matt Shaw. This was the author I was telling you about before, who you have to get some of his works directly from his website, because mass-producing book publishers will not deal with this story, which is fair. I still can't wrap my head around the fact that I even read these. So what I'm talking about is the Hub trilogy, prequel and additional stories. And yes, I've read them all. I don't know why, because I'd like to torture myself. I don't know. Sometimes I think this story came from Shaw thinking, what is the worst possible thing I can think of? What's the worst situation you could possibly put children in? And in answering to that question, he came up with the Hub. Okay, so the Hub is a kind of boarding school / foster home. It's a place for children who will not be missed by society. These are kids without families or without families that care about them. The age of the kids are 6 to 12. Once they hit 13, they're considered too old for the Hub. In some ways, the Hub is like any other school. The students are taught math, English, proper behavior, respect for elders, stuff like that. But they're also taught how to be the perfect vessel for abuse. Any and all kinds of abuse. They're taught to thank their new mommy and daddy if they're beaten. They're taught that no matter what new mommy and daddy do to them, they're to take it and be grateful. There are classes on how to pleasure adults. I cannot get more into that. But that's really the point of this place. It's where rich adults can go to buy a child to play with and abuse in whatever manner they prefer. And the fate for the children that say no to these lessons is far, far, far worse than if they had just agreed to the lessons. These children are the examples that they use to make sure that the rest of the kids stay in line. And the depravity and level of grotesque torture and pain and permanent damage that is done to these children is, I wish I had a better word than beyond. I mean, it is, I can't, like, who puts this down in a there are 3 main stories, and so the Hub trilogy is Hub, Broken, and Free. And Hub is really the story of a rich couple, very depraved rich couple, who adopt a child, and the father takes it too far too quick. So they go back to get another child. Then they go back to get 2 children. And they also purchase a freshly 13-year-old who the father can experiment on, do whatever he wants to, and if he destroys the teenager, the 13-year-old, like he did the first child that they purchased, no big deal. Because when the kids turn 13, they're killed. Because you can't control a teenager. The kids think that when they turn 13, they're sent to a different facility, but they're not. They're just killed. They're gassed, which is... there's also a prequel called Rose and a sequel called Kids. And these are by far the most disturbing and upsetting books that I have read ever. And I have often said to myself, why am I reading this? Like, what am I doing? The problem is that Matt Shaw is a decent storyteller. He really is. He weaves a really interesting story, and like the Broken is the second one in the Hub trilogy is really interesting because it's 2 men, husbands, that want to adopt a son, but there's too many hoops to jump through because they happen to be gay. And so they're like, oh, well, we'll just go to the Hub and we'll get a kid. But that kid is so broken, is so trained to do things that are just so awful. That's not what they want. These are not depraved humans. These are just people who want to try to find a way to have a son. The third one is, it's called Free. So it's, the kids sort of fighting back. But the Hub is ultimately controlled by government and really, really rich people with lots of influence. So there's nothing that will ever destroy the Hub, ultimately, is what you find out. But you also, the prequel is about a little girl who ends up being the inspiration for one of the main characters in the 3rd book, right? And then the last one is the story of the group of kids who escaped and then is trying to figure out a way to live in the world with the only skills they have, basically, is pleasuring adults. And if you're interested in the Hub or any of these books that have to do with the Hub, you do have to go to Matt Shaw's website to get them, because you cannot get them any other way because they're so depraved. And I'm not sure how far down on the list that should go, but it should go pretty damn far down on the list as far as I'm concerned. So I hope you enjoyed this. It was really fun to go through the Iceberg and see which ones I had read and which ones I hadn't read, and whether I would put them on the same tier or not. I find it hilarious that In Cold Blood always shows up on this, where that's a Truman Capote book about a true crime that the only reason I can think of it being on here is because of when it was written, because it doesn't seem to me like one of the most disturbing books ever. And then Ali Wiesel's Night is usually on there, but for me, this was required reading when I was 12. So yes, it's extremely disturbing because it's a memoir of, I think he's 14 or 15 when he gets put into Auschwitz and survived. So it is awful. The things that he encounters and sees and deals with are just awful. But I was raised at a time when you needed to learn about the Holocaust so that something like that would never happen again, is what we were taught. So, I think I was 12 or 13 when I read Night for the first time. So, like I said at the beginning, it's all about the context in which you are, what's going on in your life and who you are at the time that you actually experience these stories. And that has a lot to do with it, which is why I think these videos are so interesting for us to watch. I love watching people's takes on this Iceberg because we all have such different takes. We all have just such different experiences with the same stories. So I hope you enjoyed. If there's anything on this list that you would like me to do a full deep dive in, please let me know in the comments below, and I will see what I can do. I have 2 books I'm working on right now for scripts, and then along with the ones that I'm always working on. And I think I mentioned in my last upload that I was going to get a book box this week, but I was a week early, so I should have it next week. And there should be actually 2, so hopefully I'll be opening 2 new book boxes for you, April book boxes, and I hope you'll be here for that. So if you're still here, thumbs up would be awesome, and if you haven't already, please subscribe so you don't miss out on any future uploads or stories. And other than that, do me a favor, be kind to yourself. You are precious and important, and the only self that you're gonna get. I'll catch you next time. Bye. For 7 years into her leave that baby on someone's doorstep with the bonanza, the moral and how